Should we create a plan right now?
I'm Vin.
I'm Sori.
And this is Pendulum.
Skepticism.
I think Skepticism is the name of the band. Pendulum is the name of the song. Let me check. I'm right. Skepticism is the name of the band. Pendulum is the name of the song. Excellent. And this is for the Extreme Underground Alliance. What is an alliance, dear listener?
An alliance is a group of people that form together, and the way to get into the group is not by getting a pass, nor by being a boy or a girl. You know, they have that no boys allowed, no girls allowed. The way to get in is to jump on our Patreon for $1 a month. And you get points, and then that helps you vote with a crew of people. If you get into Patreon and you can't figure out how to get there, just send me a message and I will help you find the people. There's multiple different groups. You'll see alliance picks. We kind of announce it here and there. Whenever we announce it, you'll see that there are different types of groups, and you can jump into the one that fits you best.
Fits your fancy. Now, if you're a filthy capitalist and you don't want to work in a group and you don't want to be part of an alliance, you just want your song to be reviewed. That's very, very simple. 125 gets you straight to the head of the line. You can do that via Patreon, or you can do that via PayPal.
PayPal's faster for you.
VinandSoriMerch@gmail.com on the PayPal side.
But PayPal doesn't give you the option of grabbing the other stuff that's up on our Patreon, so...
Yes.
There's give and take. Some people do like $1 on Patreon and then do their 125s through PayPal. That's probably what I would do if I was doing it.
Yeah, well, I mean, we're starting to... There's an uptick on Patreon because I'm doing this full-time now, so I can now also participate. So there's an uptick on there. So there's a lot of cool stuff on there, and there's going to be some very cool stuff coming very, very soon for the patrons. You guys deserve it. Having said that, let us go. This is going to be... I'm actually pretty interested in hearing this song just because of the name of the band. Is intriguing to me, as well as
the name of the song.
The name of the song. Yeah.
Interesting. Yeah. Okay.
All right. So let's
Stop
do it.
waiting.
Let's go.
You hear that little weird noise at the end?
Yeah.
Do you think... Okay, wait. What do you think this song is about? If you had to use one word.
Time. Passage of time.
But then at the same time, it was...
constant...
Some of the lyrics made me think that it wasn't about time. Because it says, like... Okay, so for one thing, let me just start by saying, when it first started, bare light enters these halls, time barely passes, the floor is silent for time, the door is still for air, the mirror... Okay, like that whole thing, like when if I get like super like worried about, I'm not really even sure what actually I'm feeling actually. But like, so when my uncle was in the hospital and he was like very close to dying and everybody was circled around his bed. I mean, he ended up passing away at home, but he was at the hospital for a while. And while he was there, like, everything just, it felt like, you know, in like movies you'll see everything like slows down, and it feels like that. Like all of a sudden it was like I remember somebody nervously like scraping their empty coffee cup on their leg, but it wasn't loud, but it felt like it was really loud in there. And then you could just see the IV drip, you know, like there was just all these slow like movements, but everything felt really, really loud, and like everything became more pronounced. Like you could just, you know, a hospital has that sort of like sterile smell to it.
You guys had pretty much come to terms that he was going to die. Is that the idea?
I think, yeah. I mean, people were really convinced that like he wasn't going to die, and I'm pretty sure I heard people say like more or less like God can't take him because he has way too much stuff to do. But it's like, well, I mean, God can accomplish whatever he wants by whatever means he wants. Like, you know what I mean?
Oh, yeah.
Like, the only needed team player is Jesus.
Right.
So, but anyway, so like in that situation, it was kind of like that. So when I heard this, the same thing happened actually when Selah was having the operation on her hand, and I was in that room by myself, and it was like time was just like dragging. Of course, I hadn't slept the night before, but time was just dragging, and then I started getting a little freaked out that like, oh my gosh, it was taking way too long because it took longer than they said, and I was like afraid something bad happened, and wasn't a good feeling. So this writing made me think of that. But the song itself, Pendulum,
being in a hospital,
yeah, the halls, the, you know, like,
that's true. It definitely could be that.
because there's halls all over the place in a hospital.
Right.
And Pendulum reminded me of, remember we used to do that, it wasn't P90X, Insanity?
Yeah.
And then there's that one move where you have to spread your legs and bend all the way over, and you put your arms like this, and you just swing back and forth so your body becomes a pendulum.
Yeah.
So, yeah. But I know that has nothing to do with the song. But anyway, so yeah, it made me think of that. And then I was like, I kept thinking we were talking about time, but then why would you say time if you were talking about time? But pendulum communicates time.
Maybe he's talking about like just the constancy of things, how things pretty much stay the same through time. Colored cover left hall light routes shall part. Pleasant ways hall behind the pendulum. Through time, through light, through darkness, through dust, the pendulum. The silent becomes loud, the absent becomes present. Each time barely passes these halls behind the pendulum.
See?
So
I'm not sure it's time.
I think the point is that the big thing about a pendulum is the constancy of it.
Yeah.
That it swings and pretty much it's in a fixed position and it's not going anywhere. Whereas if you look here, you have all these things that are going through, you know, you've got the halls, the floor, the door, the mirror. Right. You know, the mirror is blind for movement. Time barely passes. The right hall, shadows marking, etc., etc., etc. So all these things that are kind of subject to change, and then in the midst of it, you have a pendulum that's just constant.
Oh.
See what I'm saying? Like over and over again. So through time, through light, through darkness. Light is, if you give light enough time, it's going to transform into darkness over time. And if you give darkness enough time, it's going to transform into light. Mm-hmm. The dust was once, you know, a solid, and then, you know, it dust, so the silent becomes loud, the absent becomes present. Like, all of those things are subject to time.
Okay, yeah.
And they change their states over time. But the pendulum, the reason that we use...
the pendulum just stays constant through everything.
The reason we use a pendulum to measure time...
Lord, help me become a pendulum.
...is because it's so constant. That's why we use it, to help us measure time, because of its constancy and the unchanging way that, exactly what to expect from a pendulum.
We had a clock downstairs that had a pendulum on it. I came down one day and the pendulum was gone.
Like here?
That was pretty disappointing.
I don't even remember that thing.
So I took the clock off the wall and threw it in the trash.
Did you?
Because I really like the pendulum. That's the whole reason I bought it.
I don't know why you had it down there. Why'd you have it down there?
It was a kitchen clock.
Oh. Yeah, so and the concept of the logos was kind of, people were trying to figure out, you never cross the same river twice, right? But at the same time, you do cross the same river twice. Like, what is the principle of constancy that's making it so that the universe stays the way it is, while simultaneous to that, it's constantly changing?
Yeah.
So what is that unifying principle? And that's where, Philo's answer is, that's simple. It's the logos. The logos is, it's this sort of principle that keeps everything together, even in the midst of, constant change or whatever.
Yeah, I think that there's, something interesting when you said that I thought of was, like, there are changes that happen, but the change can only go so far. For instance, like the natural patterns of the ocean, it's only going to go so far unless there's a tsunami. You know what I mean? Like, it only, and then that makes me think of Job, where he's having this, like, argument with God, I guess you could call it. And then he said, like, he's, like, questioning Job on all these things. And he basically says that he told the ocean, like, you can go this far and no farther. Here's where your proud waves stop.
Yeah.
And so it's the logos that says, okay, this is as far as that's going to go. So for instance, we have light that fades to dark, dark that fades to light, and it circles around like that, but it never, like, explodes or something. You know what I'm saying? Like, there's only certain changes. Like, there are changes that happen, but they're all within,
it's still within a pattern of constancy.
It's still right.
And, like, where does that come from? And so that was a real big question in philosophy, and obviously Christians, the concept of the logos had Greco-Roman philosophical categories already attached to it, and then you also on the Israelite or Jewish side, you had the concept of the memra, which is I think is an Aramaic term for the word.
Oh.
And so the word of the Lord actually...
But what did they think? Did they think it was like the word of God? Or what did they think it was?
Well, the word of the Lord actually was a person. So the word of the Lord appears to Abraham in Genesis 15. Mm-hmm. The word of the Lord stands by Samuel's bed. And so in the intertestamental period, the word of the Lord became an actual person and actually became one of the candidates for the, two powers in heaven, discussion. So, you had concepts of the word of the Lord of the memra, and then on the Greco-Roman side, you had the concept of, the word as in the logos, or the logic of the universe. And then, of course, it was just very easy for John to take those together, and then in the beginning was the Word, and the beginning was a logos, and the Word was God, and the Word was with God, and through him all things were made, and without him nothing was made that has been made. Then obviously Hebrews 1, it says that God holds all things together by the word of his power. And so, the Christians were able to adopt both of those concepts from the Greco-Roman world and the Israelite world and put them together in one person. It became a very, very compelling, argument and understanding about Jesus. And obviously, as Jordan Peterson is currently wrestling with the concept that, yes, these are very highbrow concepts of philosophy and, you could almost say mythology, but then there was a real person that we have to contend with that actually walked on the planet Earth.
Right.
And I just think that that's a very, when he talks about in Jesus that myth and the real world come together, And so,
Peterson says that?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, because, the stuff that about Jesus is just so fantastical that you would, you assume, it's mythology, but then at the same time you have this curious case that, but he's on the planet. He actually walked the earth. so it's something that's never really been seen before, or since, to be honest with you. So, it's a very, very interesting concept, but the way this guy puts everything together is pretty deep. The bare light entering the halls, time barely passes the floors. The floors are silent for time. So for here means because of, I think. The floors are silent because of time. The doors are still because of air. The mirror is blind because of movement, etc., etc., etc. So the first 8 or 9 lines in this song are pretty deep if you really sit and think about what he's saying.
So does he think it's time that moves things? Does he think it's,
I don't think
is that what he's communicating?
Yeah, I don't think that you can get that from this particular song. I do think what he's talking about, though, is the pendulum is a representative of trying to figure out having constancy in a world of change, I think, is the point of the pendulum. You're just trying to figure out in this world that everything changes and is so transient. How do we have some constancy? And then the next song, it's the second to last song. The last song is called Oars in the Dusk, and it starts off by saying the sun may stop rising, light in the morning is growing, horizon sky from deep sea dividing, clouds of waves separating, and the last line is basically. Gray shall be our days for as long as the journey remains. We welcome cold and rough wind into the dusk. Will the oars lead us? So it's to me, the band on this particular album is about, maintaining yourself and all that jazz in the midst of a changing world that has, challenges and all that. And, you're sailing into the dusk, which is, you're going towards death, but you're basically facing life as an active participant until you die, I think is the last song. But the song before that is just talking about constancy throughout change in time. So it looks to me like it's trying to have a very clear-eyed view about, reality in which we're in, and then trying as a human being with the human spirit to, eke out an existence there in the midst of that until you die. So I think that's my best shot at what these guys are trying to accomplish with their music, with the record. Really interesting stuff.
Okay,
I like this guy's writing style a lot.
It's interesting because, so I initially thought that it was about time, but then I was like, I don't really know. Actually, now I think you're right. I think it's about the pendulum. And so even time itself is a slave of the pendulum, in a sense. You know what I mean? What dictates what? Does time dictate the pendulum, or does the pendulum dictate the time?
Right. Now, obviously, the answer is gravity. But there's a whole discussion about how gravity and time interface with each other.
Not just the pendulum that was in my kitchen,
right.
But if you look at there's an invisible pendulum that we're all on and we don't even realize it. You know what I mean?
Right.
Because it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter what your schedule is or mine. Time is going to push us forward, and we're going to have to make certain decisions based off time.
Right.
You may try to rush me, I may try to rush you, but time is the ultimate rusher. Anyway, pendulum.
And my stepfather used to say, "Vinny, time waits for no man."
Right.
Shout out to the homie. What do you get the song?
I did not expect it to sound like the way that it did. So that kind of threw me off, because the way that the lyrics were positioned, I just thought that it was going to have a very clear voice.
Right.
That was going to kind of speak through, I don't know. So that, it actually, because I expected it to be another way, I was a little bit disappointed. So I think probably 7.6.
7.6. Holy moly. I'm going to give it a 7.7.
Oh. Well, Were you gonna give it a 7.6, but then you had to one-up me?
None of your business. Vin out.
Sorry, out.
Gone.